Last year, there was no game I was looking forward to more than Stress Level Zero's BONELAB. Their previous game, BoneWorks, was my favorite VR game ever at the time, and I was beyond excited to see where the next installment of this series would take us. But then the game released, and it left me so conflicted throughout its runtime. There were more than a few moments where it felt like I was playing an honest-to-God sequel to BoneWorks. The level design that I knew and loved was back and in full swing. The collectibles that gave the game hours upon hours of replayability were back and better than ever. The avatar changing mechanic gave the robust physics systems more things to play with than ever, and gave the player more options as well. And on top of all of that, the promise of an SDK and full mod support was one of the sweetest parts of the deal. The possibilities for what BONELAB could be were literally limitless. But for every good thing the game had going for it, it felt like there were three things pulling it down. It starts off very strongly and ends very strongly with some solid levels that build upon the foundations BoneWorks laid out. But that middle portion?
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the f*** is that?
What follows is a really bizarre way to introduce these new avatars, each of them coming with an entire level dedicated to them. These were supposed to act as tutorials of some kind, but they each ended up being boring at best or downright awful at their worst. This was my biggest hang-up. The game was seemingly built on the promise that fans would pick up the slack of the lacking campaign. I personally don't think this was the studio's intention, but a hefty amount of dev time obviously went towards getting the avatar system and Marrow just right. I mentioned it at the end of the last video, but we got an anniversary post on the BONELAB Steam page basically telling us that the team isn't really working on content anymore. They're really focusing on bolstering Marrow and the game that BONELAB was built on, the engine. Probably so they can license it out to sell to other companies so they can make experiences like BoneWorks. So it seems like Stress Level Zero is kinda out of the picture for the foreseeable future of BONELAB's content. And after about a year of hard work, the community has cooked up a staggering amount of content. We've gotten so much in just the first year of this game's release. We had plenty of decent models to play with and test out during that first week of the game's life, but the one thing we were missing was more content to run through with our Fortnite caliber roster. A lot can change in a year, and it's why I've been so excited for this game's first anniversary, so I can finally dig in and see if there are any good weapon mods and hopefully some good campaign level mods, because that first year of launch, the game left me with a campaign-sized hole in my heart, and I'm hoping that these mods can mend it. Most of the avatars you can find in the modding scene don't have anything too crazy going for them, admittedly. BONELAB itself gives any avatar thrown into the game stats proportional to their physical attributes. The player still has 5 slots on their ripcord to customize, putting whatever characters with whatever strengths and weaknesses they want in there. These days, for strength in combat, I usually bust out Master Chief. He can one-hand just about any gun no matter the weight because of his strength. Same for Doomslayer. I often used him whenever I needed to have strength on my side. If there were, say, enemies on top of heavy scaffolding, Doomslayer could simply topple it all over. Doomslayer was especially cool because he has his wrist blades built into the model. They're a little awkward to activate because you have to reach behind your own hand and press the trigger, then pressing the trigger again will toggle the blades on and off. But in a situation with no weapons, no one is better at ripping and tearing than Doom Guy. He and Chief were my main damage dealers. Both are great for gunfights because of their strength, and they can also both straight up manhandle enemies. To be fair though, most of my cast can simply manhandle enemies, save for a few, but the problem with a lot of the models these days are the clipping they cause. There are more than a few big characters that you can find that have weird head geometry which obscures the player's view during gameplay. And in my personal experience, it's all these damn anime avatars. All Might might be the #1 hero, but his little hair doodles get in my damn way.
Yeah, I am here.
Then the legendary Super Saiyan is definitely a beefy little unit, but he needs to trim his hair bad. These guys are all incredibly useful, but the obscured vision is annoying for gameplay as well as for you at home because it gets picked up by the recording software, and I don't like that. I'd rather just use the Spartan, or I could use the world's best father, Omni-Man. He might be slightly weaker than Chief, but he's fun for the sake of having a more standard character around. One thing I've noticed, while it's easy to find replacements for strong, heavy, speed, and light characters, it's not too easy to find characters that fill the role of short and tall appropriately. In the main campaign, there would often be moments where you'd have to use small and shrink down to scuttle under a pipe or something, or it would be beneficial to swap to tall and reach up to higher ledges. Well, there are also some moments like that in a few of the custom levels we're going to talk about. But it's hard to find custom avatars that fill the role of the two base avatars as well as they do. You can find avatars that are smaller, but not necessarily as small as the little hairless cat thing. I've been partial to having Sonic in my ripcord to fill the roles of the small character because I'm a hopeless Sonic fan, but for a while I thought he wasn't small enough. I thought he was one of the most useless. Well, besides the Among Us guys, they don't even have any hands. Why would anyone take these into a level? They can't do anything! But back to Sonic. In a few of the first levels I played, he was too big to go into a few tight squeezes, and combat with him is weird because of his fucking Mickey Mouse gloves. But then on the later levels, he was perfectly fine, and I even tested it out, and yeah, Sonic is just as short as the short avatar, so in my party he stayed. Then it's totally the opposite for the tall avatars. I've constantly kept a slot in my ripcord for the base game's tall because he just has some of the best proportions. He's great at reaching higher places and exploration. His arms are so long that I can often save myself during platforming segments. I just got a lot of mileage out of this guy in the custom levels. Most of the other tall characters though should be named Colossal because they are way too big. Do you get it? Yeah, a lot of these tall avatars are too tall. The Iron Giant is a mess. There is no way any of these contained labyrinthian levels are ever going to be able to handle this thing. If I was to swap to one of these two, I would clip through the floor. They're fun to mess around with for a minute in a few of the sandbox levels, but that's about where it stops. Easily, the avatar I've used the most after my first playthrough last year is the Spider-Gwen Fortnite skin. It's more on the speed side of things and it can't take damage to save its life, but the hands look cool and she just feels better to simply walk around and explore with. I also enjoyed the Kingdom Hearts 2 Sora model for the same reasons. It was just a good basic avatar to have. As with every single category of mod in this game, I would be here all day if I was to go over every single one of them. These are just the ones I've come across in my casual playtime and the ones that I've used the most in my playthroughs of these custom levels. Speaking of the levels, I initially had a very small list of levels I was going to look at today, but as I played through them, I noticed a lot of these creators have made other maps, and there's no way I could reasonably not look at the other maps these people have made to see if they maybe got better at level design or just using the tools. So this small list was bolstered by my curiosity. I hope it can still remain interesting all the way through, but I have left timestamps for each level or campaign I look at. And of course, links to every mod you see today will be in the description. Let's go ahead and jump into MythOS and see what kind of new blood the community is pumping into this game. Some will inevitably suck, but some are at an even higher quality than the main campaign. Let's do this. The growing pains are strong in the first few levels we're looking at, and it's no exception for the first custom level I ever played, Train Adventure. I gotta give the creator props while I can. They created a unique scene, putting in the effort to make the presentation unique to anything else we'll see in this video. It might not look the best, with a lot of the geometry honestly looking untextured or whatever this glossy light blue color is, but even some of the well-designed levels pretty much just reuse the same assets from the main game, so kudos where they're deserved. That is about where the praise stops, unfortunately. Train Adventure begins with us in front of a small selection of weapons to load up. Then we're told to jump from car to car, and yeah, you want to stay above the cars because the smallest slip up on a landing and you're going through some cracks and heading straight for the bottom. Navigating the messy, tight corridors of the train are a real challenge though, because the enemies on the train aren't interested in the player at all. As long as you're not trying to steal a little kissy, they don't care what you do. But you make it to a dead end and have to go around the sides of the train, slipping into the next available car behind some active turrets. This section is interesting because with a strong avatar, you can simply dump the turrets out of the window. The final challenge is to get past omni projectors and turrets on a huge flatbed car. The level suggests that I take cover, so that's exactly what I did. I grabbed the cover and I used it to knock the turrets off the train and block the gunfire from the robots. Then you make it to the end and you're all done. This level isn't really good, but there are some neat ideas here. For this to be one of the first BONELAB maps made by the community, it isn't bad. I do really hate how the train is suspended so far up in the air. If you slip, you're falling for what seems like forever. And if you do make one mistake or the game decides to push you off for whatever reason, it's an instant back to the beginning. None of the modded levels we look at today will have checkpoints. It's a perfect run or no run. Hopefully, we can only go up from here. Keeping with the trend of playing some of the first custom levels ever made for this game, this is Bank Robbery. I played this one soon after the game's launch as well, and you'll just have to wait and see. We begin in this room with a surplus of every ammo type and every weapon in the game. You're encouraged to load up before walking across the street to the bank. And I've just gotta say, the best thing about this map, by far, is the creator lending his incredible voice talents to the NPCs.
Oh, you're the guy who was paid to talk to? Okay. The vault code is tasty ham sandwich, because the manager really likes ham sandwiches, because he's fat.
Other than that though, this map drips with early BONELAB energy. Kudos to this guy for pulling off what he did, but it feels incredibly unpolished and a little too ambitious. It's supposed to have multiple ways to rob the bank, but after playing this thing twice, I can only ever get into the security vault and sneak past these security cameras and take out a few null bodies. And then after climbing through this ventilation shaft that's too small for even a short character to get through, you touch this pile of cash to collect it. Then you exit the shaft and get into one of those Tesla tank cars and the level is over. The profile on mod.io says there are multiple ways to complete it, and I believe the creator, but I have no interest in finding them. It's way too vast, with the goals being too obscure to properly convey what these optional endings take to achieve. It's not a very good level, but I can appreciate the ambition.
La 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 la, I like to sing and I like to not get shot by people. Oh.
Melon Factory is more in the right direction of what I want to see in these levels. It starts in a traditional BONELAB looking space, then it has you walking down a corridor, even has a little trash can lid turret section. Nothing that the base game hasn't done, but it's an attempt and that's cool. This all leads to a button that opens a door that was blocked before. It spawns in a few omni projectors and some null bodies for a small combat encounter. There's then a long stretch of hallway and a go-kart. Now, in the base game, I didn't love the vehicles, and it's not because they control badly per se, it's because my tummy can't exactly handle them. I have gotten better since then, and I was even able to have the chief cause a little collateral on his way to this button. But don't be surprised when I neglect vehicles throughout the rest of this video. That minecart section really f***ed me up. After this button is pressed, the final section starts. At the four corners of this square platform are buttons. Your goal is to press them all, but infinitely spawning omni projectors, head crabs, and null bodies will attempt to stop you. As you'll see, I wasn't afraid to grab some modded weapons in some of these levels. I cannot tell you how much I love the Rip and Tear pack. Having some of my favorite FPS weapons ever in BONELAB is too perfect. And with all of the original sound effects too? But anyway, after this giant shootout bonanza, you drop down this hole to the end of the level. This one is decent. I enjoyed the beginning a lot more than the end though. The more methodical, exploration-based combat works way better for BONELAB. The shootouts are fun for a moment, but they aren't nearly as engaging as the super up-close and personal exchanges. Just a heads up on this one, I think the creator deleted the map and their mod.io account because I couldn't find this one when I went to look it up. And I really do apologize if I just missed it, it's quite possible that happened. The file name says Woives, so do with that as you will, but this one begins with an objective, to kill everyone and get out alive. After climbing up a ladder and onto a roof, you sneakily make your way through the building, taking enemies down as you come across them.
No!
There are a couple of paths that the player can take in this one, forcing me to notice the building's interior and how it's actually pretty well constructed. This is also the second map that gaslit me into thinking the Sonic avatar was too small because they made their ventilation shafts too narrow. There's a brief combat encounter down on the dance floor with a group of Omni projectors. Then you make your way down the stairs and enter the gateway van with it warping you to a thanks for playing screen. Similar to Melon Factory, I really liked the beginning of this level. Sneaking around the building was really cool, and the limited weaponry made it feel like you were against a small army using stealth to your advantage. It was refreshing. The shootout was alright. I ran out of rifle ammo and had to go downstairs to finish the rest off with my handgun, so that's something. It's a very solid little level. Endless Data is where we start to see the glimmers of real promise. I should note that it's still technically not finished. Act 1 and part of 2 are available, but the creator says there's still more coming. For starters, Endless Data begins with a menu where you can select the level you want to play. That's unique from just about any other level or campaign we'll see today, but the actual first level starts off as pretty standard fare. Lots of corridors and hallways with a few enemies. I see that even in modded maps, the starting pistol is still bugged. Love that consistency with the main campaign. Yeesh. After a while, we reach a storage room of some sort where a small exit is high above the ground. The game probably wants me to use these boxes to make a ladder to jump up there like I would have to do in Boneworks. I actually get the feeling the creator was a big fan of the original Boneworks because of the heavy use of Monogon lore and the original Boneworks vending machine music, among other examples. But this isn't Boneworks. I have the power of the avatars. With the help of my good buddy Tall, I simply jump to the second level of the scaffolding. And its geometry seems like it's bugging out a little bit, but we won't worry about that. We then come out to an identical room guarded by Omni projectors. Soon after that, we make it outside the building and find the exit to the first level. The second level sees you getting dropped into a heap of garbage, again, very Boneworks. It's giving heavy streets vibes. This trudge down the sewer section is cool at first. It's dark and you're even given a flashlight, harkening back to the other official Bone games. But you quickly realize it's just a straight shot up to a small encounter with some enemies. Still neat though. After finding this button that opens up a door we had passed a moment ago, we start to see that promise I was talking about. Firstly, this is where we come across the first of Endless Data's custom weapons. This one is just a standard machine gun. It's nothing special, and they all look like my first blender gun, but I love the effort. Then it gives us access to these climbing tools. These allow you to alternatively stick to any surface and scale it with a little patience. I didn't pick up on this in my first run like an idiot and tried to brute force this little section with Tall, and it got me a one-way ticket through the map. I clipped out and died. But after making it up legitimately and fighting my way out of that tight space, it's the end of level 2. Level 3 immediately gives us access to the next custom weapon, a handheld shotgun. This thing is pretty cool, even if I still don't love how they look. We have a go-kart in front of us, and the level gives us a stretch filled with ramps and ammo to run into and collect, but that's okay.
I'm about to throw up.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna walk for this one if that's okay with you guys. But also because Endless Data actually has custom collectibles you can find. And I'm all about finding extra collectibles and hidden secrets. I didn't find any on the track, but that's still preferred to writing the vomit comment. After that, it's pretty much a straight shot to the end of the level. Level 4 is a weird one, starting off in the typical BONELAB office setting, but then you can quickly come across a key card being guarded by 2 purple null bodies. Walking down the hall, you can find a small combat encounter that can be taken care of rather easily. This will reveal a pair of those climbing tools from level 2, but here it's taken to the next step. Once you make it up the ledge, you can see that this level is made up of almost entirely tall pillars. Pillars that, if you want to, you can scale. The bad part is that there really isn't anything interesting to find on top of any of them. To save myself the time, and I've lost enough of my life climbing everything in Boneworks back in 2020, I spawned a Nimbus gun to check the tops. Besides a weapon here or there, the only thing to mention is this clipboard from the developer. Okay, that's cool, but I'm sure this offer has long since been claimed. After that though, the end of the level is just guarded by some turrets, but they can be easily gotten around thanks to the climbers. This level is visually really cool, and it feels like it's a thematic progression for the campaign, like it's moving outside of the MythOS offices, if you want to get into Bone lore, and out into this ethereal space. But design-wise, it's nothing special. It had something going with the climbing tools, but it didn't incentivize it enough for me to care. Level 5, the final level, begins back in a standard building setting, but we get immediate access to the last custom weapon. This thing isn't really stronger or weaker than any of the weapons we get access to normally, but it is cool because it fires these shots that sound like the purple null body blasts. We come to a door that requires a key card to enter. There just so happens to be a room with lava and platforms primed for the jumping. One of them is too tall for a standard jump though. Luckily, there's this tool that can be stuck to any surface, making for an impromptu grip for climbing. I loved figuring this out, by the way. I thought it was really clever. Kudos to the level creator. After passing the door that needed the key card, we come to another door that needs another key card. Okay, I poke fun at this, but I'm a sucker for some old-fashioned Doom level design. And I think BONELAB is a great place to implement that. After a cool battle with a metal skeleton, the keycard behind him leads to a room with scaffolding blocking the way, but the physics gun is given to the player to clear the way. Oh, I love this gun. I can't wait to see the crazy challenges this map puts me through now that I have this thing. It's gotta be some kind of crazy test to see... Oh, it's over? Well, that was a bit anticlimactic. Hang on, that can't be the last thing from this campaign. There was another door. I thought for sure that had to be another ending. So I ran through the last level again and made it to the door. Wow, so that really is just how this big campaign ends. Gotta say, that's a bummer. I was really enjoying that. The use of key cards throughout the last few levels was really cool, and I loved how much it took advantage of the base game's special tools for general progression. The game itself rarely does that, and the custom weapons might have been a little superfluous, but I really have to commend the effort anyway. As a modded custom campaign, endless data is a keeper. I just wish we had a better send-off for it. This level begins with one of the most extravagant sequences we've seen yet. At first I thought they were going to trigger my fears with this pitch black room. I don't do well with walking into pitch black rooms, call me a coward I guess. But no, it starts playing this surprisingly impressive orchestral music like I'm getting ready to watch Cirque du Soleil perform. After this though, it immediately throws me into a loading screen for the second level. And that's probably the most noteworthy thing about this little duology, I'm sorry to say. The rest of it is fairly standard BONELAB level design. Some good uses of climbing and combat, very colorful environments too. I did think it was funny when the last huge reward of this level in this giant chest was a f***ing brick. Like, this might be a good reward in The Last of Us, but here it's just a sick joke. But yeah, you grab a key card that's up a flight of steps in the same room, use a tall character to put it into the reader, and then you get a thank you message. Again, it was a cool level and I don't want to discount it because I really did like a lot of the scenarios here, but it was just a little too standard as far as they go. So these next three maps are all made by the same creator, Nullnon, and frankly, this person makes absolutely incredible BONELAB levels. We'll be going in order, and first up we have Myth Tunnels. The level provides you with some basic weapons to start out, but this level's gimmick is shown to you in the first room you encounter enemies: invisible walls. I honestly don't know if these walls are supposed to be invisible, but if they are, hell yeah, dude. After this battle and introducing the invisible surfaces, the level tests you on its next big focus: platforming. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I don't love platforming in this game. The whole having to crouch and then jump thing doesn't ever feel like I have it completely under my control. Speed's tutorial level was tedious due to this when the game first launched, but thankfully this level doesn't make you perform under do or die circumstances. After this room, we have a small standard combat encounter on some risen platforms, but then we see one of my favorite rooms I played for this entire video. It seems like a standard climbing room where you'll have to maneuver up and out at the top, but as you can see a little ways in, a lot of the platforms are invisible. At first I was kind of freaking out like, oh my god, how am I going to be able to see where I'm landing with the already finicky movement of this game? And then I had a light bulb moment. I can use the objects cleverly strewn about to gauge how big or small the platforms are. Oh my god, this is so cool! And yeah, while some of the platforming on the cylinder objects is a little weird, it was still awesome. Especially at the end, using these objects and even the enemies to determine where I could step. Then after moving through some hallways, I make my way to a small combat encounter on an invisible bridge. Very cool, as it shows me there are items down below worth going after once I'm finished up here. Then on to another extremely entertaining combat encounter.
Hey.
Shortly after though, I come to a dead end. I was left 2 of the attachable grip points in this room, but there was nothing in here for me to use them on. That is until I just did the only thing I could think of, start breaking shit. And wouldn't you know, that worked and I found a secret little exit. I continue down this tunnel and find a couple more combat encounters along the way before I make it to the final room. Man, what a great map. It had some incredible platforming and some really great arenas for fights too. One thing previous maps are okay but not amazing about is supplying you with fresh weapons to fight with as you move along. Myth Tunnels is stellar with this. It never gets boring and the map is exciting from beginning to end. Fantasyland storage begins by giving Master Chief an axe, which is really fun for me, but terrifying for these Nullmen. But after all these fires have been put out, the fire escape calls my name, but instead of a ladder, we have a nice climbable pipe, which then transitions into a climbable mat. These are pretty cool, but I get ambushed on the mat, causing me to have to make some quick decisions. After doing that John Wick shit, I feel like I can take on anything.
Gwen is weak.
We then have 2 rooms that are all about climbing over precarious situations. Certain death waits below if I'm not careful, and I found that out a couple of times. Needed to get that one out. A few more rooms leading up follow. I love the use of pipes in BONELAB instead of regular ladders. There's a place for everything obviously, but the pipes just fit the aesthetic of the game more if you ask me. After this, we come to a castle wall. I fight my way up and over to eventually find myself at the magnum opus of this level. A vertically stacked room with red skeletons that pack a mean punch sitting above. The scariest part is the lava underneath it all, encouraging you to be more careful than usual. It's not too bad to get through, but I love all the scenarios it puts you in. It also has a moment where a short character is best, so that's a plus for me. All in all, a fantastic level. The last of Nullnon's levels, Bone Outpost. It opens up in this maze-like room with different paths folding back in on each other. It's pretty basic until it comes to this really unique section with this void below a jungle of climbable pipes. We get the same effect in this next small room that wants you to climb behind these purple nobodies. After this though, it's just a few more rooms until you fall down a really long hole to a thank you message. Bone Outpost is a really good map, but it doesn't really stand out. Its biggest problem is that it's only competent. There are a few small rooms hidden behind vending machines, but that's it. Decent, but not a must play. Hell's Reach begins in a similar location to some of the main campaign's levels. I dig the ambiance, but I check around every conceivable corner like I always do and then make my way to this big red button. This has one of the walls on this building move backwards, which was really cool. You don't really see custom game events like these in these maps. Most of the levels we've looked at today are static. They can be played on, but the player rarely has any effect on the level, making this a sight for sore eyes. I mean, seriously, my eyes are getting sore. I think I've had this headset on for too long. This tunnel leads down to a bar where Omni projectors are gunning down these cultist nobodies. Some have even been imprisoned, as we can see in the next room. There's then a functioning elevator that takes us down to another level. Again, very cool to see this stuff. It looks like a cave-in has blocked us in here, but I notice a small crack for a short character to squeeze through. Using the blue dude, I make it past the cave-in where a head crab is waiting for me. That poor head crab. I fight my way through another room or two and then come to one where a walkway is being suspended above me. I use this elevator to go up a floor. There's then a giant concrete pillar that's marked with the word heavy. I use Chief to push it and it knocks the walkway down in the room before. Oh man, this is exactly what I want in these maps. Ones that take the idea of the avatar ripcord and actually make the player use it to get through levels, utilizing the avatars and their unique properties. A piston in a garbage room then awaits me. I have to angle it just right and be running forward as I activate it with this crowbar. I can't be too heavy as the game reminds me or I won't get up high enough. I find it very funny that fan-made levels have given light avatars more purpose than the actual game did. But after this, you can choose to go down 2 different holes, both apparently lead to 2 different endings. Neither are done yet, so it doesn't really matter right now, but I'm interested to see where this goes. One of the coolest maps so far though, the custom events that see geometry moving around makes me excited for this game's future. And the scenarios forcing you to use certain avatar types, ugh, I live for that shit, dude. Amazing level. Chamber 1 is actually the first map from the person who made Hell's Reach. It still has some seriously cool ideas with a very visible style that you can definitely see starting here. The player begins out in this sunset void with a go-kart in front of them on a track of void. I find out that it doesn't really matter too much because this box is an elevator that takes you down to another level. I'm then high up above these Omni projectors as they run amok below me. The starting pistol waiting next to me once again bugs out. Oh, what, the sky is blue? I give myself a little help in the form of this beauty. Aren't mods so much fun?
What? That is so cool.
Yeah, this is a functioning keypad that actually has a code hidden in the level. It doesn't contain anything besides some better weapons, but that is some really cool interaction. To get past this room, I had to push a really heavy boulder into a slot to open this door. Then I find myself in this mirrored room where I have to climb these trees to progress. I fight my way down this hall and see these void containments broken. I can't get into any of them though. Oh well, it seems like something really cool is coming up. I walk outside into this seemingly infinite room, finding a dev gun and a monkey doll, and that's it. Yeah, I even used the Nimbus gun to try to fly to the corners of this place and it's totally empty. I tried to fly back through the level too and didn't find anything. I even read this writing with something about a monkey and I wondered if I had to bring the doll to this glass, but that didn't work either. This was a neat one, but definitely should have had a better or at least a more definitive ending. The keypads were a good thing to see, but Hell's Reach was much better. Okay, so I was going to play through this campaign called Sun Temple, but after trying the first 2 levels, I think I'm alright. The first level is admittedly pretty cool aesthetically. It's all seemingly custom geometry, which is always cool to see, but as far as gameplay goes, it's an arena match. Enemies infinitely spawn in and I have to kill them. It's fun, but it becomes extremely old after a while. To keep it entertaining for myself, I spawned in some modded weapons. But then I noticed an orb floating in the air, so I shot it. Then I hear applause coming from nowhere, and then I was loaded into the next level. And this place was huge. It was so huge that I didn't even bother, because this is also an arena match from what I gather. I killed enemies, but they kept coming and coming. I used the Nimbus gun to fly around and look for other purple orbs to shoot again, but there is no way I'm checking every single one of these houses with multiple floors and multiple rooms on those floors. For each house on the map, nuh-uh. I called it quits. I appreciate the custom assets, maybe work on lighting next time, but it's entirely too open and aimless for me to want to go through it. I'd personally just rather play one of the more linear levels I've talked about today. Let's talk about Stupid Idiot 67. So this guy has a reputation in the BONELAB space now. And for good reason. His maps, while filled with some oddities, also have some of the most original concepts and level design. These maps are some of the most unique and frankly just some of the best maps you can play in BONELAB at this point. It really sucks that I couldn't get Escape from Blacktown or Escape from Laura to run properly. They were just stuck in an infinite loading screen, but I was able to play Escape from Torquay and Escape from Corio. They're doozies, just be warned. So as soon as the map loads, you can see this creator's extremely unique style of map creation. After going through these mirror doors, we come out into a town square of some kind, where all the doors are textured with a generic kid sitting down. The doors are also weirdly set up too. Some are push to open, and that's fine, but then there are some that have the hinges on the outside, so I have to grab underneath them to open them up. And there's not even anything in these rooms. So strange. Around this corner though, there are head crabs attacking humans and omni projectors shooting at both factions. Enemy AI that doesn't require you to be directly in front of them to start functioning. Very cool to see. So one thing about Stupid Idiots maps is that they all have a shared universe and story, and I say story very loosely.
Hello, old friend. Whether you remember me or not, it doesn't matter. I'm here to get you out of Torquay. This may seem better than Blackstone, but soon it's gonna be just like it. Scott Morrison has started reforms here to make Torquay even worse than Blackstone.
I don't know if anyone has actually made the effort to keep track of the expanded Stupid Idiot cinematic universe, but it would surprise me if they did. It's honestly just impressive that these story moments are even in the maps. After climbing these Sonic Frontiers-ass platforms, I found 2 crowbars, which give life to one of my favorite things this creator's maps feature. We'll see more as we move forward, but there will be times when progression is facilitated by bars that can't be gripped, and instead they'll have to be hooked onto. This is so cool, and I'm sad the base game doesn't use cool ideas like this more. Once on top of the floating platforms, we...
This guy's so f***ing weird.
Couldn't agree more. Follow the invisible path guided by weird goo head things, with this dropping us into a low-hanging ceiling room with a button.
Jesus Christ!
Pressing this will spawn several omni projectors on the player, almost guaranteeing a death. But if you can keep the kills coming, it'll trigger BONELAB'S revive mechanic and keep you going. Then you'll have to make it out of this maze, which is pretty cool to see. I think I got lucky on my first try and found the exit pretty quickly, running into this little fight with some Ford zombies. I then find myself in front of a giant flesh-textured hole. Jumping down, I land on top of the button, watching the bodies beneath me vaporize. But then I see a copy of the indie game Cruelty Squad for the 360? Okay, why take the time to make this edit? Anyway, I fall down this hole and find a metal skeleton. It's a pretty good fight, but then I get another phone call with our dude.
I will use my contact in the CIA to open another temporary portal. Get to Horseshoe Road and find D.
Still don't know what any of it means, but I soon after jump down and find a go-kart. I hop in and find myself plowing through all kinds of omni projectors and null bodies. It's honestly one of the cooler vehicle sections I've played for this video. Still doesn't make it any better for the motion sickness though. Oh, holy fuck. I fall down into what seems to be a train station. It's cool, I dig the trains, but where do I go? Seriously, what is the way to progression? This is a problem this creator's levels have sporadically. Really terrible direction given to the player. There's this large train tunnel with tracks, so I walk through and it plays a sample from Dilemma by Nelly.
What the f***, what the f***, what the f***?
But it also drops enemies, so I assume I'm going the right way now. I walk to the end of the tunnel, but it just kind of ends, but not naturally, like I would probably endlessly fall if I were to walk off of this. So I go back to the trains and walk around the tunnel. I see this weird blue block, but it does nothing. And then I find this section with some weird texture slapped on it, but nothing screams, this is the way to go. I even broke out the Nimbus gun to check out the corners of this area. Look, I'm all for some good exploration. It's one of the best things about exploring a new map. Finding optional routes, finding secrets off the beaten path, but this isn't fun. The level's construction is a big part of it, and I'm not going to pretend like level construction is easy or even that I could do it, but this guy doesn't know what consistency is. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say that this is just their style, but it's so messy. Geometry isn't always connected, making things look extremely awkward. There will be tubes that we're to walk through, but there will be gaps between the platforms, and it leads to this just feeling unfinished. Again, I could very well be just criticizing this person's style, but it makes things a little hard to navigate a lot of the time. Anyway, eventually I find that there's a small hole near the beginning of the train tunnel that I totally missed. Falling through this hole, I make my way into this little town. It's a small establishment, but it's also kind of dead. I climbed up this house just to check, and there was nothing up here to see or collect. Very weird. I did find out after dying and reloading this checkpoint that a group of enemies were supposed to spawn in this town when I dropped down. I probably broke the trigger when I went exploring above and around the area beforehand. I finally figured out that I was supposed to enter this house and make my way upstairs to the bedroom, where a hallway of nothingness is playing gaming highlights with the brightness turned all the way down. Shortly afterwards, there's a door that leads to one last message from my benefactor. They say the internet in Torquay isn't good enough for another call, but that doesn't exactly explain why we've been able to have 2 other calls. I think it's just because he didn't want to make another David Hayter AI voice memo. But now I get to load up with some new guns that were prerequisites for this guy's levels. It was a required download for his next campaign, but I downloaded a new weapon pack that injects new guns into the game, and it's pretty cool. They all sound absolutely fantastic. I liken it to the sound design of the 2019 Call of Duty Duty reboot. There's even an LMG here, and its reloading took me a minute to get used to, but once I did get the hang of it, it feels really good to do quickly. It also adds weapon attachments to the game. We'll see it more later on, but it gives you the ability to customize weapons with scopes, silencers, and grips. It just breathes new life into the game, and again, I think it's amazing how far modders have come without an official SDK from Stress Level 0. It's then time to hit this button and make a casual stroll to the last area. The level then throws f***ing everything in the kitchen sink at you. Omni projectors, regular null bodies, these custom green null bodies that take an insane amount of punishment. They also deal an insane amount of damage. Their energy blast hurt way more than the purple null bodies. Unexpectedly, Stupid Idiot's maps give me something I've always wanted from Boneworks and by extension BONELAB, a good challenge. I actually have to be mindful in these gunfights. When enemies like green null bodies are on the field, I have to be on my tippies because they will get up after a thrashing and dish it back before I can react. It's ridiculous how much damage these things will endure before they fall. So much, in fact, that I broke my rule for maps that I really like and evened the odds a little bit. After dropping down another ethereal hole, I find myself in front of a go-kart, but unfortunately it bugs out. It keeps putting my avatar's head down further than it should be, and I've already been in this world for over an hour at this point, so I just walk this track. Eventually it leads down another hole. Through 2 more doors, I make it to a finish line with a bunch of meme faces looking at me, signifying the end. Whew, yeah, that was quite different. While it's not exactly something I asked for, Escape from Torquay is the best map I've played yet. It has incredibly unique layouts. It's long enough to warrant the playtime and contains its own set pieces. It's weird as but it's also more original than any other map I've played, with challenging enemy encounters to boot. I could not care less about the story this creator is trying to tell, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time escaping from Torquay. Alright, let's wrap this video up with the last and easily best set of levels I played for this video. If there are better BONELAB levels out there at the time of recording this, feel free to send them to me, but right now, this is the king. And frankly, everything I've ever wanted from the community. A giant wall of meat sits in front of me, and behind me is a wall of floating text and a button. Pressing the button will begin a briefing video that plays on the movie screen next to me. It's actually quite the upgrade from previously, with this guy obviously using in-game tools and even multiplayer mods to create this movie. It's like VR Gmod and shows a certain level of growth with the storytelling. Still doesn't mean it's any good though, don't get me wrong. After this, we see we haven't learned a whole lot from Torquay. I still didn't have a clue on how to start the level. I looked around everywhere trying to find some way to start the damn thing. I used the Nimbus gun and see that there is a level over there, but I don't know how to get to it. It's honestly my fault that I didn't walk behind this button and the wall of text to fall down into this room. How silly of me. I take a stupid idiot lore quiz, I probably failed, and then I'm dropped in front of Corio, staring down a massive humanoid thing right in front of the entrance. But it and the rocky start solidifies my worries that the tertiary elements of level design weren't improved upon too much coming from Torquay. Again, a lot of pieces of the level just aren't connecting and it's distracting. It's probably my biggest complaint with these levels. It all feels like it's being held together by shoestrings and duct tape, and if I fall in between one of these cracks, I'll fall down like I fell off that godforsaken train again. But I make my way to the entrance of Corio, finding some guards and a security card reader. I thought I'd start looking around for a card, but okay, I beat these guys to death after they couldn't take me simply standing there anymore. And I don't find any card, but I can just push the gate open. Okay, this is a really weird little town square area, featuring some disturbing decorations, but I guess this might as well be the welcome to Corio. There are a few things to see in this mini town square, like a ground beef sculpture behind some glass, a recruiter behind a desk, and an upstairs apartment with a hostile lady. Getting past her, you can find a poster with a Corio meme on it. It got a chuckle out of me. We then enter a tunnel to the Corio meat farm, dropping down in a sticky beef hole with a bunch of skeletons, but they don't pose much of a threat. We're reintroduced to the crowbar climbing sections. This concept being introduced so early in the campaign makes me very hopeful for its continued inclusion. Climbing up, I find myself in the HR department with a very nice gentleman. I hope he makes it out of this okay. Beyond the corporate liquidations hallway, I begin to make it to the roof access, and this section showcases an upgraded aspect I love from Escape from Torquay: beefed up enemies. I walk into this open room with ladders and metal walkways galore, but these different colored omni projectors are also here, and they are absolutely assaulting the other enemies. These guys have far more accurate AI, and the weapons they carry are more damaging than the standard projector weapons. This battle on the walkways stuck with me throughout the entire campaign. I blame this first encounter with the upgraded bots as a big reason why. But the other reason was because I thought to use the crowbar to help Doom Guy's stubby stubs progress. I'm telling you guys, I love this thing and how big it makes my brain feel. But now on the roof, I have a helicopter waiting for me, but before that, I have to snipe a blue projector and his sniper rifle. This was one of the dependencies you're told to download for this mod, a 100% operational helicopter. I take to the skies and I am not very good at flying this thing. It's tough to get a hang of. Depending on the avatar you've selected, the player could be unable to push the left control down fully, which determines ascent and descent. And it feels like the character slides back and forth in the chair, not allowing me to spin left and right or go forward and backward using the right controls. It took some finagling, but eventually I was able to awkwardly fly through this under construction pass, ending the first level. The second level begins with my character getting pushed through the floor. Yeah, there's a chance when you start this level that the helicopter will spawn on top of you and push you through the ground, forcing a reload of the level. I get that we want to keep the continuity from the last level, but could you not have the helicopter just spawn like in the corner of the room or something? This happened to me like 3 times. But the start of the level brings me to the Corio settlement. This little area holds a singular cottage and lots of honestly unnecessary space. There is a military jeep here for you to pull off some sick donuts and maybe run over a skelly or two, but that's it. The next point of interest is this hole that warns against entry lest you be recycled. So I go down it anyway and find an office setting, go figure. And eventually I pop out of a ventilation shaft and face off with more special robos. Once I'm done with those, I find more along with a few green null men. It's a tense fight, and I have to reiterate again that for the first time in a stress level 0 game, I'm having to be careful in combat. Who would have thought? I hop in a nearby jeep and drive along the path until...
No.
Okay, so I learned today that these vehicles can explode and send me back to the beginning of the level, so I just hoof it into the next area. Further up these steps, I have another tense shootout with some advanced Omni projectors, but I make it out and find myself in a dungeon setting with some really weird set dressing. So Corio is supposed to be all about coal and meat. That's the gist of the story. Those are its main exports as an independent city-state or whatever the story is. It's why the walls are seemingly made out of ground beef. But this just straight up looks like a monster, which kind of makes me question the visual continuity of the map. I'm probably thinking too hard about this nonsense anyway. I come to a daring escape sequence where, using crowbars, I slide down this line and then go-kart up this meat tube. And this section in particular is what I was talking about when I said messy level construction. You can just see all the rough geometry and it looks more unpolished than you would hope for a map with this high quality elsewhere. Through a door is a gun with a few attachments on the table. Just to bring it up again, the attachments are so cool that it makes me wonder why this wasn't in the base game. It feels like a no-brainer to evolve the Boneworks gameplay. After another helicopter section that isn't quite as clunky as the first, mostly because the landing spot is more open, the level is finished. So level 3 is fucking weird. It starts in this strange open space where I was incredibly confused. I walked to the edges of the space to see if there was any kind of directions and...
Oh, shit.
Well, that wasn't right. I fly over to the other side and I fall through that too. Turns out I was supposed to jump down this huge hole that had one of those mirror textures at the bottom, so it looked bottomless, which I get was probably the intention, but it wasn't conveyed at all that I needed to jump off of the level. I walk across this giant bridge textured with a repeating meme image, which is another thing the creator loves to do if you haven't noticed. But above me is the most horrifying eldritch looking Cthulhu thing I've seen in VR. But I don't think it has a real purpose in Corio. It was probably just something the creator found on an asset shop and ported into the map for atmosphere, or because they thought it looked cool. We then enter the Blacktown slums, where trespassers will be recycled. I fight my way in and find a switch in one of those guard towers. This unlocks a door at the entrance, which leads further into this strange little settlement. We see more meme textures and enemies all around attacking each other. Exploring this place, though, reveals an entrance to the so-called Blacktown Fight Club. This so-called Fight Club is a multi-level staircase and tunnel gauntlet of enemies. So I'm supposed to be some main character military guy for this modded campaign, but I don't want to not have my avatar collection to use, which is why Doom Guy made for a great contestant in this fight club. A phone call with one of the main characters in this weird story caps off this level. The penultimate level begins with one thing I usually hate from these things, a table with weapons. In the other levels, it usually means to undercut any clever level design where more powerful items are spread out for the player to find. This is the best way these maps naturally present progression. The tables give the player what they want, but it comes at the cost of rewarding players' exploration. This is all to say, I don't mind this one a whole lot, mainly because this is getting close to the end of the campaign and the action is ramping up, and the second reason is that the only weapons on this table are the same assault rifle the player has had access to and the pistol. So this feels more like a workaround to continue the player's arsenal from one level to the next. But immediately after this, we see a meat hallway with a jeep. Jumping into this jeep and gunning it down this ramp leads me into a lengthy free fall. Oh, but this jeep doesn't explode. Okay. Quite the interesting setting we've got here, a wide open box area with small shacks everywhere.
Okay, that is the last time you are gonna pull that crap.
Some have people in them, one had a shotgun in it, but by this point I really should have expected that all the innocuous shit in the distance means absolutely nothing and has no real purpose. But the button in front of this huge door detonates charges, giving us access to the Sigil Corp's main building. TLDR, Sigil Corp is the mega corporation that came up with the whole Corio experiment and is bad news. I am not denying you anything by skipping the story stuff, I promise. This slapped together meat hallway leads to the end of this level. Yeah, that was the whole level. It was a memorable little set piece, but it still reeks of the scattershot level geometry that the rest of the campaign has. Continuing that disregard for continuity or coherency. I don't think you're gonna have a Vati Vidya channel for BONELAB fan level lore. The last level begins with a bang in the Sigil Corp lobby. Exploding my way through, battling red and blue Omni projectors, green Nullnon, all with some close calls as well. Busting out of this mirror door and out onto the outside of the building to find my way up this pipe system. And what do I find to climb up? Double crowbars.
I'm so excited about that.
I clamber up these pipes level by level using them, only to then enter a busted pipe and use the same method to reach the top. Oh boy, another go-kart. Careening through enemy forces gets me to this huge space covered in the mirror texture we've seen many times before. But this quickly turns into a daunting combat and platforming segment. Some really tense trades with the blue projectors that specialize in long distance if you remember. Along with the transparent floors and myth tunnels, this room is one of my favorites in this video. I absolutely adored this mix of brutal combat and brutal platforming. I'm a little surprised that this isn't the final room we were presented with. It feels like a proper final push at the end of a campaign. And I actually had a really tough jump right here, so I tried it with a few different characters and could never make it. I attempted it one last time, except with a new tactic. I used the crowbar. And wouldn't you know, I made it. God, I love the crowbar. Scrambling up, I see this crazy void tube in front of me with hostile enemies inside. I find my way through, but I'm warped into another Sigil Corp lobby. 3 different routes lead to 3 different challenges at this point. I honestly don't know if these are mandatory or if they're just optional, but I went through them all out of curiosity. I started off with the theoretical physics department. This was a short platforming challenge with a few enemies and 0 gravity. I would have loved to see this gimmick come up sooner. It makes platforming more fun than usual. Aiming myself by pushing off of walls could have led to some really cool gameplay moments.
What the What? What?
But after this, it's back to the lobby. The Death Squad training ground is up next, and at first it's just a straightforward combat hallway. But in the room above, we see a warning claiming that there's a contamination, and to clear it, the Horde will have to be released. Pressing the button floods the room with tough enemies, forcing the player to survive a close quarters cluster with all these dangerous enemies for 60 seconds. They spawn endlessly, and my dumbass dropped my assault rifle in the excitement. To survive this, you have to exit the room when the exit becomes available. This one was tough, but incredibly fun. The final department is the Laced Blunt Factory. I don't know if this is the peak of this campaign's lol so random XD weed jokes, but it's pretty high up there. Damn, I didn't mean to do that. But this department is a weed factory. I know, I'm ruffling on the ground. It's so funny. It's even playing that Smosh song about weed. It's so funny. Alright, I squeeze through this conveyor belt and make my way back into the next part of the factory where this hole in the ground is labeled, "Do not smoke, bro, this shit is laced." There's one more small combat encounter up this flight of steps before we go back to the lobby and head up to the roof. In hopefully the final meat hallway of the video, we find hopefully the last tutorial gun of the video.
Let's try this one more time.
So is anybody keeping track at this point? We also find a few more high-power weapons like a sniper and another LMG. I hop in this Jeep and drive until I drive through dimensions, fighting enemies and eventually finding a normal-looking door with a typical office setting inside. This is essentially a giant combat gauntlet at this point. Several green Nullmen stand in the next few rooms and it takes a lot of firepower to take them down. Another Jeep awaits me, and have you ever wanted to play the last level of Halo 3's campaign in VR? Because I think that's what the creator wanted too. But after this, we hit the event horizon and get thrown into a thank you room. We are finished. The creator mentions how he's not making another map until the SDK releases, so it's quite possible that all the things I've complained about, like the nonsensical level geometry for example, these could all be problems that stem from the limitations of the current BONELAB modding tools, or lack thereof. Overall though, Escape from Corio is some of the best BONELAB content you can play right now. The length of it is so impressive. It does rely on other mods like the vehicles and extra weapons to make some things work, but I'd say it's an achievement that they were able to incorporate it all with their own vision. I could ask for more specific challenges that require the attributes of a specific avatar, but I don't think I need to. These maps have more creative level design than any of the others that I've played, and it's very possible that restricting those ideas with the parameters of the avatars would water the already great aspects down a bit. So I'm good with what we have for the most part. Stupid Idiot 67 has a style, and I wouldn't want to stifle that with my preconceived desires. I want whatever this guy has on the menu. They have said that the next time they make a map, they'll try to bring assets over from Scorn, that H.R. Giger-inspired Xbox game. Now, if we return to Corio, we'll probably see those meat hallways in much higher fidelity. I'm looking forward to it either way. BONELAB on its own unfortunately hasn't really moved the needle since its release. There's been next to nothing added to the game, no new content at all. I'm stretching to say anything was added. Just a few patches here and there that clean up mistakes from the base launch. It's genuinely sad too. Boneworks wasn't perfect, but we did end up getting a few pieces of extra content after launch. All for free, mind you. But it was great stuff, and it was because of this extra content that I went into BONELAB beyond ecstatic, hyped for the longevity of a game that I presumed could only go up from its previous entry. Sadly, that's not how it all went down, and I was left pretty disappointed by the total lack of official content released. But the silver lining was always the mod support, the promise that the fans would step in and give the game what the devs were too busy to do. A real stepfather versus the father that stepped up scenario. And so far, I'd say the community deserves a best dad ever mug. Seriously, if you had any of your work featured in this video, I want to personally say thank you for taking it upon yourself to keep this game alive. From weapons, new avatars, other features like gibbable enemies. Oh my god! And of course, the new levels. The footage you saw of Boneworks in this video was actually a mod called LabWorks, a total port of Boneworks into BONELAB. There's also a port of Stress Level Zero's game Duck Season. I didn't talk about these today because they would essentially just be me reviewing 2 additional games, but I had to mention them because it's so incredibly impressive. I think I speak for everyone when I say thank you, thank you, thank you. I know I'll inevitably get comments that tells me all about all the levels I've missed, but that's okay. I think it's really important to think about that though. We've been talking about this stuff for over an hour now, and it feels like we've only scratched the surface. There is so much left to dive into when regarding BONELAB's community content. I haven't even touched on things like arena maps or parkour trials. There are probably still so many weapon, campaign, parkour, arena, any kind of map or anything mod you could think of, I don't even know about yet. There are so many to dig through that it would be impossible to cover them all in a single video. So if you want to see another video similar to this one that tries to do this all over again but with different content, let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, please leave me a like and a subscribe because you would not believe how much that helps out a small channel like mine. But I guess that'll be it for me today. I will see you guys in the update and like year roundup review Christmas video. We did that one last year and I really liked how it turned out, so I think I'll do it again this year. But anyway, I appreciate you for watching, so thanks for stopping by and have a great day.